It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. He's here, folks. Alan Saunders, back in the building, back on the Afternoon Drive with me. Alan, how we doing?
Yeah, appreciate Derek and Nick holding down the fort for me a couple days. My wife had a death in her family and had to go attend to some things, so I got that taken care of. Good to go. And I mean, nothing happened while I was gone, right? Like, there's nothing really to talk about here.
No, actually, I was just gonna say, I was gonna play the outro and we'll get out of here. But
let me just workshop this. Steeler Nation, let's drive. Steeler Nation,
man.
Let's drive.
Do you think we can get Russ to do a voiceover?
Russ is the kind of guy that, like, I'm sure charges $5,000 for that, but would also, like, very enthusiastically do it for the $5,000, right? Like you'd get a good quality product.
You get what you pay for, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're not in the know, you're probably wondering, what are these guys even talking about? Russell Wilson and the Steelers reportedly mutual interest. Going to meet with him tentatively before free agency opens up. Obviously, Russell Wilson being released by the Broncos has the ability to meet with teams before the official free agency opens up early next week. Alan, we've talked about, quarterbacks so much. We've talked about the idea of bringing in veteran competition. Russell Wilson, obviously, a ton of accolades along the way. Now at this stage in his career, is it just competition? Do you see this as him and Kenny Pickett would truly be battling it out? Or is Russell Wilson coming here and this is a lack of faith shown in Kenny Pickett?
Well, let me just start here. I think Russell Wilson is the best quarterback the Steelers can realistically get their hands on this offseason. I think he's probably
taking everything in consideration.
I think he's better than Kenny Pickett right now. I think he's better than Justin Fields right now. I think he's better than Mason Rudolph right now. I think he's not better than Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield, but those guys' salaries are just not going to be within reason for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? So I do think that, especially considering the finances, right? The Broncos are committed to paying Russell $39.1 million for this coming season. And it does not matter what he earns from any other team. That's all he's going to make. So if the Steelers pay him $1.9 million, which is the veteran or whatever, 2.1, I haven't looked up what his veteran minimum is. Let's say it's $2 million, right? The Broncos still owe him 37.1. If the Steelers pay him $12 million, then the Broncos only owe him 29.1. You're just taking money out of your pocket and giving it back to the Broncos. There's no reason for anyone to do it. So he's going to play for a very minimal salary and salary cap hit in 2024. He's extremely good. He had a great year last year. He did not have a great year in 2022, but he had a great year last year. He is a good quarterback. He is the best quarterback they could have. But it is still like not this, well, quarterback's done, taken care of, don't need to look here anymore kind of situation. Yeah. Russell Wilson's 35 years old, going to be 36 this November. Certainly is not any kind of long-term, thing. And look, let's be honest, short mobile quarterbacks do not generally age super gracefully. That is not the kind of guy that you want to tie into playing until he's 40. So, you started this with, will it be a competition? Yes. The Steelers are holding a competition at quarterback. It does not matter who they sign. Anybody who comes in here is going to compete for this job with Kenny Pickett, and they're not giving up on Kenny Pickett. And signing Russell Wilson wouldn't be giving up on Kenny Pickett anyway. Because unless Kenny Pickett turns out to be the worst version of himself possible, it's hard to envision him not turning out to be a better option than Russell Wilson sooner rather than later. Like, the 37-year-old Russell Wilson is not a quarterback that I envision being particularly good. And so I don't think this is giving up on Kenny. I do think this is providing the stiffest possible competition that they could for Kenny Pickett, if this is the road that they eventually go down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point about the way that his game has aged. I mean, I feel like even towards the tail end of Seattle, I started to feel like we were watching him on the downswing of his career, and then obviously makes the move, to Denver. Last year, finished 18th in EPA per play. The one area where he really was good, though, was in the red zone. Passer rating of 118.5 to lead the entire NFL at the time of his benching in the NFL. So maybe that is a plus. Obviously, when you get down there, they had to settle for 3 less than anybody else in terms of that. So I don't know. But yeah, everything else other than like the surface numbers, because everybody's pointed that out, right? The 26-8 touchdown to interception ratio. Everything else, again, with taking into consideration the EPA, all the advanced metrics, 18 is basically as high as you're going to. He's basically an average quarterback at this point in his career. He is an average to back end starter, somewhere between the 18th to 25th starter, I would say, in the NFL. So to that point,
and Kenny was probably 25 to 32, right? Like he was at the bottom.
Yeah, but that was last year. So
right. Well, so like,
right.
18 is about as good as we could possibly expect Russ to be, and 25 is about as bad as we should expect Kenny to be, and they're headed in converging directions, right? I mean, Pickett was better in 2020. Now Russ did have a little bit of a rebound, but the age wins eventually. I don't know. It's interesting. I do think I don't think it's giving up on Kenny Pickett or the idea of him eventually being the team's starting quarterback. It does make things weird from a contract perspective, right? And here's the big potential holdup I see in this deal. Russell Wilson is going to play for a cheap contract in 2024. There's no reason for him not to. Make the Broncos pay that money that they guaranteed you. Don't make your new team pay it. Let them surround you with better teammates, right? It's just a no-brainer. But what is he going to want in 2025 as part of this contract, if anything? Does he want a 1-year deal? Does he want a 2-year deal? Does he want a 4-year deal and he wants to play till 40? Because if that's the answer, I think the Steelers and probably most other teams would be out. Is he willing to compete with Kenny Pickett, or does he want to be guaranteed a starting role? If I was Russell Wilson, I would not be signing unless I was guaranteed a starting role, because he can go sit at home, make the exact same amount of money, and be the whole NFL's backup quarterback, and just wait until somebody gets hurt or wait until somebody starts to struggle and be like, yo, sign me. I'm in. Tag me in. If I was Russell Wilson's agent, I would be like, don't sign anywhere where you're not definitely the starting quarterback, because you're making the same money no matter what. Don't tie yourself in to a place where you may or may not have an opportunity. And then the 2020, I mean, will there be a bidding war? Because, obviously everybody's going to pay him the same for 2024, but if more than one team wants him, the way they're going to try to get him is by adding money to 2025. So
and incentives too, right? I mean, you could add incentives on it.
Yeah, you can add incentives too, right? But it's all going to be in stuff that's going to come out in 2025. And so what's the market like for Russell Wilson? Who really wants him? And are any of those teams willing to just hand him the keys in a way that the Steelers are not going to be? I think that's probably the big hang up. I honestly think this deal makes a lot more sense for the Steelers than it does for Wilson, but it seems like he's interested enough to take a meeting. And we'll see how things go. But if I were him, I would say that, like, if Minnesota doesn't keep Kirk Cousins, that's a better opportunity.
Yeah.
Vegas is a better opportunity. He's been out west his entire career. Sierra would probably make more money living in Vegas than he would playing for the Raiders. Also, go beat the Broncos twice a year while they're paying you to do it. Sounds like, as a competitor, a pretty enticing opportunity, right? I think that would be a better fit. So, and I think just sitting at home might honestly be a better fit than coming to play for the Steelers. Like, wouldn't you rather wait until like Dak or Tua or, somebody like that, a team that could go to the Super Bowl, loses their quarterback and then jump in and be the savior? I don't know. If you're making the same money either way, I think he has a lot of other compelling options besides Pittsburgh.
Obviously want to stay in this conversation, but sometimes breaking news happens as we were recording. Jalen Johnson's deal is done in Chicago. 4 years, $76 million, $54.4 million guaranteed. So somebody that was on the Steelers' radar tried to trade
that much money.
I know.
That's pretty reasonable. Like,
yep.
That's less than $20 million a year, and of that, less than about 16. No, less than that. That's pretty doable. That's a good deal for the Bears. I think
that's why I'm wondering why it wasn't done before this.
Yeah, what are they waiting? Maybe he wait. I don't know. That's a pretty solid deal. I think the Steelers would have signed a deal like that. I think that makes you feel okay about the rest of the corner market, though. If you know that, like, Chidobe
Yeah, what's
Awuzie isn't
L'Jarius
going to
Sneed
come
gonna sign
demanding
for?
17 a year, right? If Jalen Johnson's getting less than 20. So could be a lighter than expected cornerback market. I don't know. Maybe just gave the Bears a sweet deal, but that's a good
Well,
deal
I
for
know it
Chicago.
requires a draft pick too, but like I'm curious about Sneed, what he signs for with whether it's with the Chiefs or
I would
whoever
assume
trades for
Snead
him.
should try to top that. I mean, he's won the Super Bowls. He has that cachet that I think he should be
Mhm.
able to demand the top deal in the market. But like you said, a team's going to have to pay a second round pick to get him. Will they want to part with top money and a draft pick? I don't know. Snead's also
Yeah,
older, right?
by 3 years. Yeah,
Yeah. So maybe the length could be the separator there. Maybe some teams wouldn't necessarily be into 4 years for L'Jarius Sneed, but I think that makes the corner market pretty approachable for the Steelers. Once they figure out quarterback, which I do expect, I love Omar and his dedication to saying nothing. Very pointed, very fair question from Jenna Harner, our partners at Channel 11 today, and in their one-on-one with Omar. Are you going to sign a quarterback in the next week? I mean, that's as free space on the bingo card of a question
yeah.
as you're going to get this time of year as a general manager. Like, I will bet the building that I am sitting in right now at like 10-1 odds that the Steelers are signing a quarterback in the next week. But Omar, just keeping all his options open, not gonna commit to anything. I
Nope,
respect it.
just one quarterback on the roster, and
They
by
only have
the
one.
way that he
That's
talked
it.
about it, the way that he said it, basically made it seem like I mean we only have one, but like hey, if we had to, we could be okay with only having one.
Yeah, like we only have one quarterback, and as long as in the 21 years I've been here, we've always had three. But we are open to any course of action.
Yep, yep.
I do love it.
Regarding Russ, I wanted to ask you about something because I put this out there, and it's been a tendency not just for the Steelers offense, but also Russ. Like the lack of utilization over the middle of the field. Would that be something that concerns you? Like, would that be a hope of Arthur Smith's offense to hopefully get more out of that? And if Russell Wilson were the quarterback, is that once again something that you would not expect to see?
Yeah, it's not his thing. It's not Pickett's thing either. It's interesting. Like very
Sure.
similar kind
Yeah.
of players in that regard. Wilson's obviously more experienced. I think probably more accurate.
Hmm.
But they're pretty similar players in that like a lot of their strengths are the same and a lot of their weaknesses are the same. The big thing with Wilson is maybe compared to Pickett, where like it feels like Pickett's not going over the middle is like a mental thing or a risk aversion thing.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Wilson just
Yeah.
can't see the middle of the field. He's too darn short. Like he can't see over his linemen. And now that he's not real fast, it's not as easy for him to like juke over here and create a throwing lane where there isn't one. He
Yeah.
kind of needs to be either moving from the beginning or working to the outside. I mean, either way, I kind of expect that to be look that it's not like the Falcons use their slot receiver.
Hmm.
This is an outside, this is a run the ball and throw it deep offense. And Russell Wilson's very good at that. I think it
Yeah.
lines up with his strengths just fine. But yeah, I mean, some of the weaknesses and some of the strengths very sort of almost strangely line up with what Kenny is good and not good at.
What's funny is the weaknesses thing. We could bring Justin Fields into this conversation too. Allen, last and second last year in terms of the amount of time it took them to get rid of the football. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, they held onto the football the two longest in the entire NFL. And is that a concern for you? I mean, obviously it's a concern, especially when you take into consideration, the state of the Steelers offensive line, their pass protection. Like if it carries over from last year, we expect that group to be better this next year than this year. But Russ has taken over 100 sacks in the last couple seasons. And I would say that, Denver's offensive line, at least last year, they might lose some pieces. Lloyd Cushenberry's a free agent. We'll see there. Was a better unit than Pittsburgh's was in terms of pass protection, at least last season.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because that's always sort of the knock on Kenny is that he kind of leaves too early. He doesn't hang in the pocket and make a throw. But also,
Yeah.
like, nobody wants him to take a sack either. It's not like the opposite
Yeah.
problem is better. The opposite problem is worse. And so, I don't know. I think part of it is just that he does need to create passing lanes sometimes. And I think he does have enough athleticism to still be able to do that. He feels the rush pretty well. He always has. It's not like a guy that you even like when he's had some big sack totals, and in 2022 in Denver, and then once when he was in Seattle, 2 times he's led the league in sacks taken, but he was never a guy that you saw like getting lit up. I feel like he kind of felt the rush pretty well, and there was like some calculated risk taking there. He doesn't fumble a ton, which I think is a really good thing. If you're like Fields on the other, like that's a big difference, right? Between Wilson and Fields is, and he did have, I think he had 10 last year, but Fields has had a ton over his career. And so I think I mean, the holding on to the ball in the Steelers offense, like the Steelers are going into this offseason, I think, with the intention of upgrading their offensive line. I think they want it to be a lot better than it has been. But it's certainly a concern, right? If he's going to hold on to the ball that long. And I wonder how much that will change with Wilson going back to a more play action based offense where it's just sort of run the play fake and throw the ball. You can't. You're not going to be fast. You're going to be like Tom Brady fast because you are running the play fake, and that takes time. But the time that you're being subjected to pass rush should be a lot lower.
I was just saying, I wonder if it's a product of, you're talking about like you've mentioned, obviously, the way that his game ages and stuff, a mid-30s quarterback that has relied on his legs for so much of his career and like still tries to make those same types of plays, running around in the pocket, trying to get to the outside, or like just trying to extend plays that he no longer can extend at this point in his career physically.
Yeah, I mean, he was in such a different offense last year than he's been in his entire career. And I think it's fair to wonder, like, so his ADOT, his intended air yards, was 7.1 last year. The second lowest in his entire career was 8.6. His Pro Bowl seasons in Seattle were all in the 9s. So is that a different offense? And sort of like, round peg into square, holding Russell Wilson into something he wasn't very good at? Or is he washed up and he can't do it anymore?
Right.
I mean, if you have the answer to that, you're a wizard, but because I don't know how you can tell that from the outside.
Yeah. Most amount of passes in the NFL as well at or behind the line of scrimmage last year for Russell Wilson. Also, another breaking news thing here, maybe this not as relevant to the Steelers, but Chris Jones and the Chiefs extension is done, 4 years worth up to $119.8 million, 115.5 fully guaranteed.
Ooh, that's big. Big.
To get that much of a guaranteed too. I mean, it wasn't a great situation last year between the two going into the season. It seemed like it got a little bit ugly there, although he was there for the opener, despite not having not signed. Then they obviously worked out an agreement for last season, go on to win the Super Bowl, and he checks every incentive off because of them winning the Super Bowl. And now this, but to get that much of a guaranteed.
Yeah,
didn't expect to see that. That's
pretty big. Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that. I would have to think that probably puts Kansas City's salary cap situation into a place where they're not going to be able to keep Snead, even with a relatively soft corner market.
Okay, so that's how we make it relevant. That's a good point. There we go. That's how we make it relevant to the Steelers. Is
like that is a ton of money, and I don't know how they can do both, unless maybe Mahomes is going to take a pay cut. I don't know. Like that's a ton of money.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you do about that. Alan, I know that. Did you have anything else left on Russ?
So one of the things that I really wanted to learn at the Combine this year was whether the Steelers were interested in Russell Wilson, whether Russell Wilson was interested in the Steelers. I learned absolutely none of that. And as a result, it was Jerry Dulac breaking the news today instead of me. And sometimes that happens in this business. But because I was looking for that, I asked a lot of people about Russell Wilson, and I got into a lot of conversations with a lot of people from around the league about Russell Wilson at the Combine. And I did learn something that I feel like is relevant to today's news. And that was everybody I talked to about Russell Wilson, the person, which has certainly been like a big part of the conversation over the last 3 years, right? Not just his play, but I think we can all sort of admit that he is a deeply corny individual, as was I lampooned at the beginning of this. But beyond that, there was a lot of drama, right? There was, him wanting more say in the offense in Seattle, and there was a rumor that he has denied, and I'm not sure has ever been proven one or the other, that he tried to get Pete Carroll fired, and that seems to have forever soured him in Richard Sherman's eyes. There's been some bad blood there. Then he sort of engineers his exit from Seattle, goes to Denver. There's drama about his parking spot. There's drama about his office. And then obvious feud with Sean Payton this year that ends in him being benched. And Sean Payton, in my entire time in the NFL, I've never heard a coach speak about a player the way I heard Sean Payton speak about Russell Wilson at the combine. It was an evisceration of Russell Wilson. Like, those two clearly do not like each other. And so it adds up to drama, right? And you never know what the source of drama is, but that's a lot of it following him around. But everybody I talked to said, it was just a bit of circumstance. Like, him and Peyton were kind of oil and water personality-wise. Peyton didn't pick him. He wanted to go in a different direction anyway and just found a reason to do it. I talked to a couple of his former teammates from his time in Seattle who had nothing but good things to say about him, said he was a good guy in the locker room. Talked to some people who work for Denver that said the parking spot stuff that was all way overblown, and the locker room generally likes Russell Wilson, even if he is a little bit put on sometimes. And so I thought that was interesting when I heard it. And now obviously that the Steelers are talking to Russell Wilson, I figure it's relevant to the beat, but I don't know if that stuff matters to people when they hear the name that this is who the Steelers are talking to or not. But I don't think it should matter to the Steelers at this point.
Let me ask you this, taking all that into consideration, the personality that he is, obviously what he's accomplished. You talked about being knocked down a couple pegs if he does come in here for a competition and then loses that competition. Is that something that you think he can embrace, is being a backup quarterback?
I don't know. Maybe. I wouldn't. If I was him and I was going to agree to a competition, I would want some kind of out in my contract, right? Like, I'm not going to be the backup. Like, if I come lose, cut me. Like, or something like that. I don't know. Trade me?
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we see that in baseball. It's pretty common. It's not very common in the NFL. Baseball, that happens all the time, right? Like, if you lose your job, you have an out in your deal. I don't know. I think that's one of the big, and like we said, like, do I think Kenny Pickett is better than Russell Wilson right now? No. But is it like plausible that Kenny Pickett could beat Russell Wilson in a fair competition this August? Absolutely. Look, I mean,
we haven't seen either one play in this offense.
Kenny Pickett wasn't good last year, but I think we all acknowledge that it was a criminally bad offense. Not a good offensive line. We haven't seen Kenny Pickett with Arthur Smith yet. I don't have like great if I was to say, like, what are the chances that Kenny Pickett is better than Russell Wilson was last year? I don't know, 25%, something like that. Like, not high. I'm not predicting it. But like, it's an acknowledgeable percentage, right? And then what are the odds that Russell Wilson is worse than Kenny Pickett was last year? Again, like 25%. Like, he's old. Like, I was
just say, in your opinion, who's that more of an indictment on? Is it Kenny actually getting better? Or is it Russ getting worse more?
I mean, you can't fight aging. Like, we've seen some guys like Tom Brady do it for a long time, but Russ does not look like one of those guys that has done it. That Brady, Breeze, Manning, where they're just the point guard of the offense and they just sit there and throw little darts and they never get hit and they never take any risks and they never actually even look like they're throwing on the ball that hard. Like, that's not who he is. He's not the kind of guy that generally kind of defies the aging curve, right? And so I would say I am more confident in a very near term decline from Russell Wilson. Like, I think Russ is kind of cooked, like, compared to his heyday. Like, he's not anywhere near the quarterback he was.
Sure. Yeah.
It's certainly on a decline, and it could be a steep one. But he's still better than Kenny right now. And so I don't know. It's an interesting paradigm. It's almost in some ways too good a competition, where I don't know how you have a winner and a happy loser either way.
That's what that's what I was going to ask you next is, okay, I asked you about how Russ would embrace the backup role on the reverse side of that. If Russ comes in here, becomes QB1, what does that mean for Kenny Pickett's future?
I mean, I guess like there's two ways to look at it. One is like, hey, Russ comes in and oh my God, turns out he should have been playing for Arthur Smith his whole career because this is perfect for him. And he's not only not worse, but he's better than he was last year. He looks like the same quarterback he was in Seattle. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level, and the Steelers are winning the AFC North. If that happens, I think Kenny Pickett's probably content to just bide his time, right? I mean, like I don't see how he could have too much of a complaint with that. But I think we can acknowledge that's probably like not the most likely scenario. And so I don't know, man. I mean, there's already, whatever happened in Seattle last year with Pickett. I mean, I think that was more about his injury than anything else, but I don't know why he would want to stick around. I mean, he's got the 5th-year option coming up. If the Steelers are so dead set against him that they're going to play like a mostly washed up Russell Wilson because he's 25% better, I think that would say that they're pretty well done with Kenny Pickett, right? I mean, that's how I would interpret it if I was Kenny.
Yeah.
Right? Like that.
Yeah, you're not going to, I mean, what is you're going to have Russ come in here to play in 2024 and then go back to Pickett in 2025? Like, I
think that's plausible if Russ comes in and is really good.
But you don't think then Russ will be back in 2025?
Depends on what the contract situation is. I don't know. Yeah, maybe signs a 1-year deal, right? Comes in, is really good, and then goes somewhere else. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's awkward. That's for sure. There's no unawkward way about it. Like there's no way to smooth it all out and make everybody happy. Not that should be their goal anyway. Like that's not the point. The point is to win football games. But you do have to manage the personalities to some extent. And I don't think Kenny's any kind of diva or anything. I just think if you're a young player, you either want to play or you want to plan to play. Like what do I have to do to play? And I don't see how he would have that if they're going to bring Russell Wilson in and just decide he's the starter. Now, if it's an open competition and Kenny loses, well, then that's kind of on him. But I still don't know what would happen then. It's certainly a bizarre situation.
I mean, through this conversation, as we're talking about how it is awkward and, potentially messy, depending on how the competition were to go. We talked about the whole Mason Rudolph thing, right? Is like being like, why would the organization want to create that sticky of a situation? Like, isn't that kind of doing the same thing here? It's just with the guy that wasn't already incumbent.
If he's not clearly better, yes. If Wilson is just clearly better, then I don't think it's as big of a deal. And maybe they could do like a Jordan Love contract with Kenny where they say like, hey, Russ is good. We're going to try to win with him. We'll extend you 2 years and give you another shot when he's done. I don't know. Maybe that's possible. I don't think I would take that deal if I was Kenny, but like it's in the realm of possibility, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. We'll see how it all plays out, but
also one more thing on this. Not that they're always right. Vegas is very high on this outcome. The Steelers are odds-on favorites to be the next team to land Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson is favored over Kenny Pickett to start week 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. So, not like I said, they're not always right, but they are they're in on this one. They're in on this one more than they were on Fields.
2 things. I did the ultimate thing that you should never do. I got Alan.
Okay.
That Chris Jones thing didn't happen. Somebody sent it in a group and I read it on here and it wasn't real.
Oh no.
I got I got fake Schefter.
A darn Schefter.
But this is real, Alan. The Patriots are signing Chukwuma Okorafor.
Oh, Chooks to the Pats. Their offensive line is brutal, so that is a good move for them. And I guess good.
Honestly, great for Chooks. But going back to the other man, I mean, the telltale should have been 115 fully guaranteed out of 119.
It happens. There's
but it's
I
funny
want
because
audience. I want the audience to chime in to be what should the punishment be for getting got on the air. There needs to be some kind of consequences for this. So we need you all to let us know what needs to happen to Smitty for this just egregious failure of journalistic integrity, and frankly, sullying the good name of the Steelers Afternoon Drive podcast in this way.
Yeah,
let us know. Let us know.
That's horrible. That's on me. Really, it's on this group chat, but I definitely should have done my due diligence looking at it as well. I now need Chris Jones to sign this contract. Basically, it's funny because people are going to be listening or watching this show back, and when they get to that point where I'm talking about, they're like, "What is he talking about? This didn't happen." And then they're going to have to wait until the end where I clear things up and say that I got. So, welcome back to the show, Alan.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, you know the drill. Tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. I wrote about safeties today. Didn't get to talk about the safeties, but I wrote about safeties today. Go read that and go check it out. Maybe we'll get to that tomorrow, or maybe Chris Jones will sign with the Steelers.
Yeah, Chris Jones got to do something now. Zachary Smith PGH is where you can find me. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with any questions, thoughts about what we talked about. Of course, I'm sure a bunch of you are going to let me know about the Chris Jones thing in the comments as well. So I look forward to reading those. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review over there for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.